Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Andrew Pryor. Even if you're not directly affected by artificial intelligence or AI, it's likely you've heard about it, possibly on a daily basis. President Biden recently issued an executive order aimed at regulating AI with standards, funding, training, and enforcement, all meant to mitigate the risks surrounding AI technology. Companies engaged in AI will be particularly interested in what happens next. Joining me to walk through the executive order and what it means for you are Sean, Joyce, and Jennifer Kosar. Sean, Jen, welcome.
Hi, Andrew.
Good to be here, Andrew.
So Sean, let me start with you. The administration issued this executive order at the end of October, and it's described it as a landmark executive order with a list of pretty significant goals and policy objectives. Could you talk about what the overall objective of the EO is and how the administration intends to meet that objective?
Certainly, and it is really a broad-ranging executive order, 111 pages exactly. But as President Biden said, it's talking about the promise and the peril of AI. And it really is, how do we actually ensure and encourage the innovation in this country while making sure the safeguards are in place? But the executive order really has, I think, 4 themes. And the first one is all about safety and security. How do we ensure that we're securing AI and making sure it's safe? And he actually designates to agencies like NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and really requires them to develop a more thorough risk management framework. They've already put one out, but really to do a deeper dive. The second theme is about testing and validation. How do we make sure we're validating these models, right, that they refer to as foundation models in the executive order? And then the third theme is about how do we ensure innovation and competition? So how do we attract, right, all of the global talent? And how do we make sure that we are a leader in innovation and then make sure that we are allowing small companies, large companies to be part of this really changing technology that has been around for quite some time. And then the last theme is about what are the societal impacts of AI and how do we ensure all the way from the labor force that we're upskilling them, right, to how are we making sure that these same workers are not being displaced and actually it is being used for good purposes, maybe developing new drugs, helping actually make our economy actually grow faster. So thematically, those 4 themes, I think, are the key areas that the executive order focuses on.
And Sean, just a quick follow-up. What's the timeline for implementation of the executive order?
So there's, throughout the executive order, I think there's everything ranging from 90 days where they're asking for reporting requirements on the models to all the way to 270 days with various agencies being required to really do things. One example is the Department of Treasury is being asked in 150 days to put out for all financial institutions best practices. So it's really, I would say, wide-ranging from 90 to 270 days, and there is certainly a lot of what I would say homework assignments that these specific agencies have.
And Jen, I want to come over to you, talk about, there's a lot of information floating around about the risks related to AI, but what are the specific risks that companies are running into or going to face?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things the executive order does really well, I think, is it recognizes that there are both broader risks around the AI, how AI works in general and the way AI systems work that apply to any AI system, but also recognizes the very context-specific considerations around risk and how AI works. So thinking about the specific type of AI system that's being built and how it's deployed. So I think it does a nice job at pointing to the existing frameworks and standards that already recognize this and reflecting that important contextualization of risk around that. So some of the risks that organizations already recognize they need to address, and I think still have some work to do even under the order and some of the things that are to come around that, around data governance. So thinking about the important issues around taxonomy, around data training and use there, around transparency and how they're going to explain how they use that data, and even some of the more nuanced considerations around privacy and balancing, again, both the opportunity that AI represents for all of us, but also the risks around that they need to think about and protect our rights and human safety considerations around that. There's also the workforce considerations that Sean mentioned as well. This is, again, both an opportunity and a risk. I think there's much to do to bring the workforce along, to help with training and upskilling, and also to make sure that the workforce is properly trained to address the unique risks around, again, both those broad AI considerations as well as the particular context in which they will use the AI. That's all related to, again, AI systems in general. There's some pretty unique things to consider with respect to generative AI. So, we've heard a lot around misinformation and hallucinations. There's also some pretty specific things around, the unique training needs around it, the data governance needs around it, and ensuring practices are aligned to those needs. And the more creative features, let's call it, around this technology and how organizations need to think about that. So, again, I think the order does a nice job of recognizing those different aspects of the different technologies. And what it really gets down to is what we call responsible AI practices, and, matching both the capabilities of the technology with the problems you're trying to solve, and balancing the risk considerations with the opportunities that you see, and always striking the right balance with the intended outcomes.
Sean, so if we think about the company dealing with AI risk, who's at that table spearheading risk aversion efforts, and who's involved in executing on the plan?
So I think it's all the risk practitioners in an organization. So who are they? They're your chief risk officer, they're your chief privacy officer, they're your general counsel, they are your chief privacy data I mentioned, your chief information security officer is another one. I also recommend typically the CTO or the CIO is the one spearheading the AI use cases, how they're actually going to apply that. That is a great function to be part of this, what I would call governance structure, to help ensure that you're actually using AI responsibly. So this is one of those no regret moves on the EO, regardless of who the next administration is. I think it is incumbent upon every organization out there to put that structure in place, bring those people together, and really set up that structure to make sure you're really exercising responsible AI.
So final question for both of you. What are some questions and issues companies have raised, and what strategic steps do you think companies may want to consider to mitigate AI risk? So Jen, maybe I'll start with you.
The question most organizations start with, and we actually think this is the right question, is how do I get the most value out of my AI investment? And that's actually is the best question, because as I said before, you have to match the technology's capability with solving the right problem. So it is the question to begin with. Then it gets down to how do we test and deploy? How do we monitor outcomes over time? What are the skills I need? How do I think about human oversight? And really importantly, how is this all going to evolve over time? Because how it works today is not necessarily how it'll work in the future, as this technology gets more and more pervasive throughout both organizations and society. They're also thinking about their existing enterprise risk frameworks, governance, operating models. Again, how is all that going to evolve and change as the technology gets more pervasive? One of the things I think is really critical to the unique ways that the AI ecosystem works is this shared accountability we're going to see across organizations. So both from a technical perspective in terms of how the technology is actually deployed, but also when you think about how transparency might work, how information will need to be shared, and really how the accountability and transparency will have to work to ultimately benefit the stakeholders and the users of the systems.
Sean?
So I think, Jen raises some good points, but I think you really got to focus on the fundamentals. So how do you we already talked about that governance structure. How is it actually managed by standards and frameworks? And they are out there already. NIST has developed one I referred to. ISO has also, right? Then the next step is, do you have a risk taxonomy that actually defines the risks associated with this AI technology? And then the third part is, have you set up the policies and procedures to really govern the use of AI in your organization? I think if you do those three things, it's a no regret move and will really help the organization move forward.
Well, Sean, Jen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share your insights.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
For those of you following AI and other technology developments, check out the link in the description of this episode and stay with Policy on Demand as the AI conversation continues. Take care.